This is the Parents in Sport podcast. Amazing guests, honest conversations, topics that matter.
Welcome to the final episode of Season 6 of the Parents in Sport podcast. I am your host, Gordon MacLelland. I'm delighted to be joined today by Founding Director of Red Star Education, Kristen Cunliffe. Kristen, thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Now, we've got a really topical one today. We're going to talk about financial fitness and how we can help our young athletes thrive. And this is based on some recent stories in the press, a recent TV documentary, which we're going to dig a little bit deeper into during the episode. But Kristen, before we get started, can you just tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I founded Red Star Education back in 2013, when financial education really was not the topic that it is now. My professional background is as a financial planner, and that was something that I had been doing since 2001. But in 2013, I did feel that there was a gap in the education system, particularly within sport, that was meaning that I felt the advice and the support and the guidance around money and finances was being mixed up with the idea of financial advice. I'm a great believer in education. I think it's really important. And so it was my intention to create a solution that gave financial awareness, education and well-being that was not based on an idea that somehow we would have to solicit clients or sell services. And so I'll say this, we started working with the Premier League and it wasn't that easy, but without getting into too much detail, we started working with the Premier League and it has since grown that we look after a lot of the football academies. We look after the young ladies in their academies and various other corporate and sporting clients, always on the basis of financial well-being and education.
Fantastic. I mean, amazing story and background. And I think that bit about being independent, like you say, I think that was the niche as well. And I certainly feel that with our work, that actually you're on everybody's side and you're objective. Mm-hmm. There's no hidden agenda to what you talk about. And actually it puts you in a very comfortable place when you're talking in all of these places. Doesn't mean everybody has to agree with you, but there's no hidden motives or agendas behind what you're doing. You're trying to find the best information to get out to people. Now, This is on the back of this recent BBC documentary. If you haven't seen it yet, those of you listening, it's well worth a watch. It's called Football's Financial Shame. I'm sure you'll be able to find it on iPlayer. I think a lot of us were deeply moved by that. I think the thing that sort of touched me the most was thinking of these iconic players that I'd watched back in the day with all the glamour and all the glory and just looking at sort of beaten up versions of them now, a large part of which had been caused by some of the decisions that they made regarding their own finances at a time where they were probably earning the most. How did you feel watching it? What was your impression of it?
Angry, very angry, very frustrated that this is the situation even now. And I realise that the story of the V11 and those guys goes back a number of years. But if I can just tell you one of the reasons that I really had this idea about independent financial education was on the back of another documentary that I watched in 2013 that was made by Clark Carlisle. You can find this on YouTube, called Football Suicide Secret. and I was devastated, to be honest, that players and like I mean Clark Carlisle used to play at Blackpool, which is where I'm from. I have a season ticket, and so and I was devastated that these players were just being given such terrible financial advice. I was a financial planner, and I was thinking, if I was in that position, I wouldn't be doing, what's been going on. So I felt anger and frustrated that this had happened to these guys by people who had ingrained themselves into their lives, who were in a position of trust with people who were in what I would consider to be vulnerable circumstances. Because all right, they were grown-ups, they were professional players over the age of 18, but that doesn't mean that there isn't some vulnerability there that says actually you've, as a planner, as a financial planner, you've got a duty of care. And I just felt completely sad that this would still be rumbling on for those guys. I mean, I could debate, which I won't do here, like whether I think HMRC are correct in their point of view. I don't. But it just made me feel so angry and frustrated, and more determined, I think, to speak about this topic very openly.
Yeah, and for me, I think that yeah, it's given it another springboard and another push, as you say. There was the one in 2013, and then obviously the one now. Um, just this wasn't part of the I guess schedule of questions. We always go off on tangents on
Go
this.
on.
Anyway, um, do you think that's still potentially going on?
I know it's still going on.
Okay. Which means then it's more important that we get all this information out there and we make
Yes.
sure people try and do the right things. Okay. So you become massively trusted by sporting organisations around the world, providing education in this space. As I touched on earlier, a big part of this is you don't sell financial products, you're not pushing services, you're not just ticking boxes. Tell us why. Tell us more about your ethos, but why that is so important in terms of who people are listening to.
Yeah. Um, it's so important because if we take the example of the players from the documentary, and this could be right across the board. I mean, you only have to search, on Google sports stars bankruptcy or whatever, and you'll find the tales of it. Um, they did the right thing. They went to take advice. These guys weren't just, buying 25 Louis Vuitton handbags every week. They did what they thought was right. And they trusted people who had been welcomed into their workplace, whether that is the club welcomed them in, or the manager welcomed them in, or their agent. It doesn't matter. That's their place of work. And they had a right to expect that the people who were coming through that door were going to do the right thing. And so for us, it was always very important that what we were doing was education. And I don't believe there is room for a commercial partnership in education. We don't take sponsorship off anybody. We don't sponsor other things in order to get access. We're paid by our clients, and I'm really quite upfront about that. If you want us to deliver a workshop, fine, but you will pay me for it, because I don't think education is sustainable if it isn't like that. But everybody knows where they stand. You,
Yeah.
you know that my clients know what they're paying for and what they're getting, and they also know that I won't be taking any opportunity to try to entice athletes to be our client, because a lot of them are not even 18.
Yeah.
And even those who are 18, I mean, I've got a 24-year-old daughter, and I love her dearly. But even at 24, there is an element of vulnerability around her when it comes to finances. And that is very prevalent in sport. And so I think that, yeah, having trust and having integrity is absolutely paramount. It's the thread that runs through all of the businesses. Like I have three businesses, and it runs through all of them to because I think that people, both their players and their parents, when they're still young, deserve to be respected enough that somebody shows them a great deal of integrity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We are very fortunate, by the way. When I think of a lot of the organizations I go in, and of course, decisions are made, and then you can't backtrack from decisions, and there's personal agendas, and there's other motivations going on, even though they do it, and all of those things. We are very fortunate, both of us, that we have found a way of being massively neutral whilst on everybody else's side. And I think we are lucky at that. I don't take that for granted at all. You have a large number of conversations with young people, which is really cool because actually lots of people talk about young people, but actually never sort of see them on a daily basis. I mean, I get all kinds out of kids when I ask them questions. But what are some of the challenges that you're seeing in this space that crop up the most with them? You know, what's your sort of day to day look like when you're talking to kids?
Um, so when we are having conversation, obviously, so most of my conversations are around money and
Yeah,
wealth and
yeah.
what it means and all of that. Living up to expectations is I think a pressure on them.
Do you
And
think that's an expectation of their teammates or an expectation of the industry they're in or an expectation of their families or a combination of all of them?
all of them,
Okay.
all of them. And I think it's an expectation they put on themselves too. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that it can be very overwhelming for them to be in that position. And one of the things, and you will have seen this, you know, there's such a pressure on them to learn and to know, and the amount of other professionals that I speak to, and when they know what I do as a profession, it's like, oh, like they should learn this, they should learn that, and I think, oh, draw up a list. But can we just remember that these are young people? So before we start saying to them, here's a to-do list of everything you, in inverted commas, should learn, I think that we have to realize that that actually puts a bit of pressure on them. If we're asking them to learn all about finance and you know legal things and you know let's think about what career you might want to have when you're 30, what when you're 17. I mean, I realize it's important, but I think we've got to appreciate who they are today. Like,
Yeah.
who are they right now? But I think a lot of them are under pressure to live up to an expectation, particularly if their peer group, their friends at home, maybe people in their family kind of see them as the footballer, the golfer, the boxer, you know, and what is that going to mean if they are financially rewarded for those things? You know, there's a big fear of making mistakes. Well, what if I do it wrong? What if I, you know, lose money? What if I spend too much? You know, and I often talk to them about being able to enjoy it for the time being, not spend everything that they might earn, but also to appreciate that they are young people too. And I think that because of this fear, there is then a reluctance for them to trust in their own judgments. And actually, young people are smart. Like they are smart. I've just done some sessions with some under nines. They were smart kids, like, you know. But I think that if they're not encouraged to voice what they're truly thinking, particularly around money, if people don't have that conversation with them, I think that they can start to feel like I'm not going to understand this, therefore I have to outsource all of those decisions. And that's part of our program and work that we do, which is to say, you don't have to do that. I'll explain it to you in a way that you will understand. Because there's too many people in pinstripe suits in finance who would like them to believe that they're not smart enough to understand, and they absolutely are.
Yeah, and that's I mean that's fascinating as you say. Young people are also vulnerable, aren't they? Especially in
Yeah.
an area where, you know, that we don't have any knowledge. I mean, I think a lot of us as adults struggle with finance. Never mind, never mind sort of teenagers making sense of it. And I think that first bit of earning money, and the support we give them Do you think they understand the importance of budgeting, trying to put some away, or do you think, like we all did back then, when I think to some of the money I got paid for playing it, it certainly didn't lead to high performance in my university days. I can safely say that now. Do they consider that?
I mean, some of them will, just like any other
Yeah,
young person. Some of them will, some of them won't.
yeah,
And I think that that's down to, as I say, them being young people, that their opinions are not yet formed. And let's be honest, like depending on where you are, and I realise that there's people who are probably listening whose children are not in football, they might be in something else. So, they may well be getting something like the APA if they are, through UK Sport and Team GB, and there might not be a huge amount of money there. There's going to be other young people in sport who are maybe already, winning tournaments, or, like we have like we work with the PDPA, the Professional Darts Players Association, and I think that it's quite obvious that there is, young people there who are earning, a huge amount of money. Are they going to go off and buy daft things with it? Yeah, yeah, because they're young people,
yeah,
and that's okay as long as there is a balance.
yeah,
And so I think that it's asking them to understand what longer term means for someone who's 17, 18, 19 years of age. That's not 25 years.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
A long time for a teenager is probably about 2 years. So I think it's
yeah,
it's understanding, getting them to understand in proportion of where they are in their life.
yeah. Yeah, and I think it's also just that level of understanding about when you first start getting some money or paychecks, and even the tax system. I'll never forget, many years ago, there was a very, very good rugby player who did play for England. I'm not going to name him because this is a brilliant story, but he played for England, and I had the privilege of knowing him and being involved in the sort of early part of his uh, not career, but when he was a young boy. And I remember him getting his first professional contract. And I heard this story from a good friend of mine now, who was living close by at the time. And he got his first paycheck. And on the morning of the first paycheck, he divided his salary by 12. He went running in to my friend's office and he said, "What's going on here? Who's this NI? And who's this?" And he couldn't understand that he'd lost half of his deductions.
Yeah,
So he had to explain to it, no, you don't get
you don't get it all.
everybody knows. And then you sort of realise, but why would he have known? He'd just done school. He got walked out of school, got a professional contract. First paycheck came at the beginning of the season, and it was like, well, who's this NI taking all my money? Now, at least NI taking your money is better than somebody who's maybe doing it for the wrong reasons. But
Yeah, well, yeah, you'd think,
yeah,
but this is it, and you said it. Like, how would you know? I mean, we do one of the workshops is about tax and national insurance, and it's very eye-opening
oh
for
yeah,
them, not me. And we have good debate about it. But it's true. How would you know? How would you know if somebody doesn't tell you that? It's a strange thing, isn't it? That if you get a contract, if your contract is £2,000 a week, it would be easy to think, oh, well, I've got £2,000 a week to spend. And so part of the work that we do is to say, well, actually, let's have a little look at the impact of tax and national insurance, and then you can see what you are left with. And I think it's just introducing these concepts in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming, and that's how you embed it into the psyche of a young person to think, actually, I do have to think a little bit more about what's going to happen next. But
yeah.
I just don't think you can be too prescriptive, because then it can go the other way.
Yeah, and going back to this idea, young people, not because they're not bright, but maybe just a lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, they still need support. I'm getting more and more convinced, particularly with this generation, that we can't treat 18-year-olds as pure adults as soon as they hit day. I think we've got to go into those early 20s now. They just need a continued level of mentoring support. Can't just be, oh, you're an adult now, sort out the world, because there's too much to sort. And I think then this comes back to families and parents who play
Mhm.
such a critical role in supporting their young people. But actually, a lot of families will also lack confidence in this area
Mhm.
because we were probably never taught. We just worked it
Mhm.
out. And you do your best and you scramble from month to month and you hope
Yeah,
that the world will be all right.
yeah.
How can we help the parents then? How do we encourage them to help their kids with this? Because that's what they'll always say to me. They'll say, oh, Gordon, can you talk to the kids about this? It'll come far better from you than it will from me. But
Hmm.
actually, we have got to do some stuff at home. We've probably got to do some role modeling at home. We've probably got to have some conversations. So what do you think that needs to look like?
I think it is, and like, can I just say now, like, I am not going to sit in an ivory tower here, right? I
No,
know how
no,
hard it is to
yeah,
raise kids, like, and I get it that not everybody is from a background where money is something that is trusted. I understand that for some people it will be completely alien to the parents, and that there could be generations of people who have not. Had to deal with finance in that way. Like, I completely understand that. Um, I think learning together is the key. And I think it is for parents to be honest with their child and say, no, I don't know it either. But let's together find the answers. Let's do that together so that the child doesn't feel, okay, so my parent doesn't know, now what? Like, now we're both uneducated in this particular area. Um, and can I just say, like, I've got some clients who, have incredible careers and qualifications, but they still come for advice on their pension or their investments or whatever, in my other role. So it's not about intelligence, as you say, it's just about, I don't know this particular thing. But I think if parents can say, look, let's find out together. Let's, if we're going to go online, if we're going to watch videos, if we're going to use, for example, the Red Star Education, like, we have an online learning portal, like, let's do that together. Let's both find out, instead of saying, well, I don't know, and feeling, which I know some parents would maybe feel shame and feel guilty for not knowing. Why would you know? If it's not your job, why would you know? And I think that to say to a young person, look, you might be in the position where this is going to be an impact on your life in a way that has not impacted in my life, but I'm here to support you. So let's find out together. I think by researching who to listen to, I
yeah,
think
I
is
was about to say that's important when you say,
yeah,
can you imagine typing in some Google searches and some of the sponsored things we'd get at the
yeah,
top, and
yeah.
you'd think, because it would, wouldn't you?
Oh
Naturally,
God, yeah,
it's only because we've become probably a little bit old and not cynical, but maybe hopefully a
yeah,
little bit wiser. But you would, and then
yeah,
you click and you think, oh
absolutely.
well, this looks all right. But actually, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what are some of those in terms of just some of those sources?
Yeah.
Where are we looking?
Okay. I am going to say probably the geekiest thing that you've ever heard, but
Okay,
HMRC's website is brilliant.
okay, yeah. Well,
It really is,
yeah,
right?
well, it has to be, doesn't it? Really, if you think about it logically. Okay, that's brilliant.
So,
I'm not sure I'm going on to read it after this, but I'm going to take your word for it. But go on.
yeah, so hmrc.gov.uk, or yeah, gov.uk. You find it. The official website of HMRC is really good. The Money and Pension Service. Okay, so this is an arm of the UK government. They have a massive amount of resources and things, guides on, how things work, and it's kept up to date, and it's all relevant for the UK. Because I know that you support people outside of the UK. So what I would say is, if you are outside of the UK, then find your own country's, like, official sources of information. Your children might love TikTok, like, we do a TikTok. I get it. But if you actually want to know the correct things, then for me, the government sources of information are going to be the best places. And as I said, in the UK, Money and Pension Service has got a huge amount of data on there about different topics and things like that. Clearly, Red Star Education also put out a lot of stuff
If you didn't
to
say
help.
that, I was going to do your plug for you.
Oh, thank you so much. But yeah, like we do it
Yeah, yeah.
because we also know that there's a lot of young people out there who, are not in sport and they're not getting this education in school. And so it's part of our commitment to communities also to give out
Yeah.
resources and information where we can for everybody to learn. But I do think that parents can just be really open to listening and listening to their child and what their point of view is and what pressures they feel that they might be under, especially from their peer group. And don't feel like, I don't want parents to feel bad if they don't know all of this stuff. Like, it's okay, but say that you don't understand and then go and learn together.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's really good advice. And I think we know from all of our work, just the encouraging of conversations, the encouraging of listening. If you don't know, seeking support in the right places,
Mhm.
not listening to unsolicited advice next to you that throws you into a whole,
Mm.
set of worries and choices that you're making. Back yourself, look after your family, try and do
Mm.
the right things. But yeah, just be
And
open.
trust your gut instinct.
Yeah, I say that. I say that. Don't worry what somebody else is doing. Trust your gut. If you know, trust your gut and believe
Mm.
in yourself and what's right for you, your kids,
Mm.
your family, and your context. So important. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I
important.
completely agree.
Um, Now look, most people, and that this is the vast majority of people looking to help create the best environments for young athletes to thrive, both in and out of their sport. I mean, you and I see that.
Mm.
I think they should celebrate it a lot more, what opportunities are given to young players, rather than just the negative side of, oh, well, we didn't quite make it, because they have an
Mm.
unbelievable week in some of these sporting environments that we see with who they get to hear talk and the different
Yeah.
opportunities that they have. We saw in I guess, the documentary, the hidden toll it has on people when they don't feel in control of their money. And that was really sad to watch. And actually, ultimately, their impact on their mental and physical well-being, which I suppose that applies to all of us as adults when we're worried about money. It does affect your physical and mental well-being. Does this just for you make you more determined to have an even bigger impact?
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. Yeah, it really does. Because I feel it is so important. And as you mentioned, not from a capitalist point of view that says, oh, we've all got to, have our own wealth or anything. Because to me, wealth is not necessarily about money. It's about choices, it's about opportunity, it's about feeling confident and secure. And that doesn't always come with a huge income. Like it's not about that. But I also think it's about people feeling that if they make financial decisions, that they are making them with an open mind, with their eyes wide open, that they know, that they know everything about it, because I think that that's empowering. I think where if we're too eager to pass those responsibilities on to somebody else, you do risk that you don't know what's going to happen, and I also think that that's giving up some of your individual power, and I think that it's really important for us to have that, and for young people especially to feel empowered in their own lives. They're going to grow up regardless, and do you want them to grow up feeling like that their voice is listened to, that they are respected, that they can make their own choices? I would want that for every young person to feel like that. And I think that when it comes to their money and the choices it can give them for the rest of their lives, I think that that's really important, that they feel empowered to do so. And the only way I believe that that can happen around finance is not to try to sell them something.
Yeah, which I suppose then takes us on to this next bit then, because like you say, in that documentary, there are people that are around sports clubs that are either directly linked, indirectly linked, have ways in through different contacts. Young athletes around the world get exposed to lots of different, that includes me and you.
Mm,
You know, let's be clear
mhm.
about that. This
Yeah.
is everybody. They get exposed to different people, different stories, different tales, different elements um, of advice. I'm sure that parents, we've had a few have been approached by agents, who
Mhm.
are approached by sponsors, who are approached by different people offering them services and promising the world to them. This must be so hard because the shining lights of Hollywood must come on, mustn't they? For people who haven't experienced it, it must be like, wow,
Mhm.
this is amazing. So we've obviously got to just take a deep breath and as a parent and just step back for a second. What do we need to understand and consider when choosing who we decide to go with, who we decide to work with, whose product we think is going to be beneficial to our child?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think firstly, as I said before, trust your gut instinct. I I know that there are amazing agents, solicitors,
So do I.
tax
Yeah,
managers,
yeah,
financial planners. I work with them. I am in, like professional networks with a lot of them, and I would trust them and recommend them
yeah,
um, because they are rooted in a very similar ethos to us.
yeah.
Um, you won't see them trying to be part of somebody's
Entourage.
entourage. No, they have their office, they have their job, they know what they're doing, and they're really good at it. And they will have experience and qualifications. And I think that as a parent, and then consequently as an athlete, it's to speak to the people, not to go with the first person that walks through the door, not to think, oh, they're driving, a flashy BMW and they've got a great suit, therefore they must be good. You don't know if it's all on debt. How do you know? You no idea. And what's more important is the people you're going to work with as your financial planner or your lawyer or whatever. Like, who are they? What's their experience? How long have they been looking after athletes in the same position? Are they going to be able to do a good job for me in my position? Um,
I think that's key as well, isn't it, Kristen? Because I see this because we also get an awful lot of people in the world who think they have a silver bullet to absolutely everything and jump on one end of a spectrum almost. And the reality, I think you've touched on something really important there. What might look right for one person in one context may not look right for somebody in another, and they
mm.
need to bear that in mind.
Oh yeah,
Don't just
yeah,
copy and paste
absolutely.
what somebody else is doing.
No, absolutely, because there's so many things to bear in mind. I mean, sport is a truly international, thing. And so we've got to look at it, where are you living? Where are you from? You might not even be from the UK and you might be here, but you're going to go home and then you might need a tax accountant who can deal with, cross jurisdiction things. Like, there's all of these things. And sometimes I see people who've been qualified as a financial planner for 6 months and saying that this is what they're going to do. And that's fine. You might build up to that. But for me, I think that as an athlete and as a parent, you'd want to say, how long have you been doing this? What is your qualifications? What is your experience? How much are you going to charge me? And what do I get for that work? And I will tell you now, if there is any hesitation in somebody saying, this is my experience, these are my qualifications, this is my CV effectively, and these are my charges. If they can't answer those questions for me, I
Yeah,
won't be using them
yeah,
because I don't know a single profession and a professional who I hold in high regard who would not answer those questions for everybody. And I think that if somebody has turned up with the contract that says you're mine for the next 3 years and this is how much we're charging and sign it now, I'd be concerned because any decent professional will have that chat with you and let you go and think about it.
yeah.
So I think that sometimes parents can feel like, oh, this is the only person who's going to help us. Like, there isn't just one person. There's a lot of people, and you have got a right to speak to more than one person and see who is going to be the best fit for you and for your family and for your child. And if you don't like them, I mean, if you just feel like I actually don't like you, don't work with them. But I think sometimes we feel that, oh, you've got to, because these are the people sat in front of you. You don't have to make that snap decision. You can speak to a lot of people and get a really good feeling about the person, and then go and look them up.
Yeah.
So even when they're sat in front of you and they might answer all your questions and have a great conversation, then go and look them up. Look at their social media for their company or their business. Like, there's people who will put it out there who their clients are, and the clients might be willing to be in pictures and endorse them and so on. That's fine for them. But if it's not fine for you, you've got to think, right, well, can I ask for that not to happen? And I would prefer someone who's more discreet. Your preference on the type of advisor you have is just as important as them wanting you as a client. And I think that having more trust in your own judgment is a good thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there's so much information around, and people do need to make sure they're doing their checking up on who's giving them their advice. Because
Mm.
actually, look, we all know anybody that's trying to sell us um, stuff will have a number of techniques that they'll use to make you feel good, promise you the world, and
Yeah.
and do it. And that happens
Oh,
not
yeah.
in sport. That happens
Everything.
in every industry.
I mean, the FCA have just prosecuted, I think, three influencers who were talking about investment products on TikTok and Instagram, and they're not authorized to do so.
Mm.
Like, you were the FCA, another brilliant website. You can go on there and check the firm and check that the advisor is actually registered to even give the advice that they might be giving out. And I'm sure the Law Society and all of that will have, their own kind of registers, because uh, just to be sure. And it's not that, and I mean, I don't think anybody who is credible would be offended if someone wanted to check those things out.
No, and this is too important. I mean, look, there's lots of important topics in the world, but this is really too important a topic not to do some checks. I mean,
Yeah, do your due diligence.
I think the scary thing from that documentary, as you say, as well, was that people had come into the club, so they're obviously trusted. But actually, it wasn't just hidden away. They were actually shown that things were all right as well. So it wasn't like it just all went quiet and the money disappeared. It was like, look at
Mm.
what you've got. This is what's going on, and then the next
Mm.
thing they know, it's unravelled itself.
Mhm.
Um,
Oh yeah, and I mean, it was just fraudulent, wasn't it? And
yeah,
cruel and deceitful, and yeah, and unfortunately, I think no matter how much due diligence you do on anything, you can't legislate for somebody defrauding or lying or breaking the law. You can't legislate for that.
no,
But you can, as much as possible, you know, poke in the right direction and hope that you've checked as much as you can. I think
yeah.
that's all you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, final question. Let's round this all up. So we've talked about lots of different stuff. Obviously, this is the Parents in Sport podcast. This is the last bit of input for season 6 before we return
Mhm.
again in the new year. What are our top tips for helping parents in supporting their young people in this area? What are we going with as a final sort of thought for people to take away?
Um, I thought about this. Here are my things. Be open to having difficult conversations about money.
Yeah,
Okay? Put your own feelings of ick about talking about money to one side, right? You got to be brave and be really proactive in opening that conversation. Because if you're a family that isn't used to talking about money, I think as the parent, you're going to have to be proactive of going to your child and saying, "Hey, maybe we should talk about this. Maybe this is something that, you're thinking about and I'm thinking about," and just be really open and honest that it might feel a bit icky, but we're going to do it and we're going to do it together. Don't judge. And I mean, don't judge them and don't judge yourself. Okay, it's all right. If you don't get it, it's okay. There's places, as we've discussed, where you can get some really good information from and do that together. Do remember that they are young people. They're gonna want to have a bit of fun. And actually, if you try to insist around money that it becomes so restrictive, unfortunately, what can happen is when they get that little bit older and they're not relying on a parent for guidance, we can start to go shopping crazy, right? And then actually we make the situation lots worse. So it's almost like saying, yes, I know you're going to want to buy your Louis Vuitton wash bag or whatever nonsense it's going to be.
Or a nice pair of trainers or all
whatever, but like, let's also balance that with whatever you're wanting to spend. Let's balance that with some savings as well, because if you say you've got to save everything, you're in danger of when they are kind of free to make their own choices, that they'll just take it to the extreme.
Yeah, absolutely. Kristen, what an absolute pleasure to have you on the Parents in Sport podcast. Really good conversation. Hopefully we can pick this up again at some point in the future. Thank you for all the amazing work you're doing. We're obviously in quite a few similar environments, but we're never in at the same time. So really good to catch up with you. And we wish you all the best. Thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. Check us out at parentsinsport.co.uk.